Hello.
Hello again.
Great.
Okay, so
Um,
are you ready?
Give me just half a second.
No problem.
Perfect. This. Great. So, mean means significa. In general, en general, necessarily, necesariamente, sí, in particular, en particular, y ticket es una entrada, boleto. So, when we use the words one, you, we, and they, we sometimes mean people in general. The word they means other people, but not us. For example, we say, if one goes to the cinema, they must buy a ticket. If you go to the cinema, you must buy a ticket. If we go to the cinema, we must buy a ticket. As an example of they, we can say, they don't sell food at the clothes shop. When I say, if you want to go to the cinema, you have to buy a ticket, I don't necessarily mean you in particular. I don't necessarily mean you in particular, but people in general. We generally use the word you more than one or we. So we use the words one, you, we, and they when we mean people in general. So what do we mean sometimes when we say the words one, you, we, and they? What do we sometimes mean when we use the words one, you, we, and they? When we use the words
When we use the words
one, you, we, and they,
one, you, we, and they,
we sometimes
we
mean
sometimes
people in
mean
general.
people in general.
In the sentence, if you want to go to the cinema, you have to buy a ticket. What does the word you mean? In the sentence, if you want to go to the cinema, you have to buy a ticket. What does the word you mean? In the sentence,
In the sentence,
if you want to go to the
if you want
cinema,
to go to the cinema, you have to
you
buy
have to buy a
a
ticket.
ticket.
The word
The
you
word you
doesn't
doesn't
necessarily
necessarily mean me
mean me in particular,
in particular,
but people in general.
but people in general.
Which do we generally use the most out of one, you, we, and they? Which one do we generally use the most out of one, you, we, and they? We generally use
We generally use
you the most.
you the most.
What must you do if you want to speak a language well? What must you do if you want to speak a language well? You must study a lot
You must study a lot
and repeat,
and repeat,
repeat, and
repeat,
repeat
and repeat if you want
if you want
to
to
speak
speak
a
a
language
language well.
well.
What do you have to do if you want to stay healthy? What do you have to do if you want to stay healthy? If you want to stay
If
healthy,
you want to stay healthy,
you have to eat healthy food,
you have to eat healthy food,
sleep well,
sleep well,
and exercise.
and make exercise.
Not make exercise, do exercise.
What's the difference between make exercise and do exercise?
Curveball. um,
this happens a lot.
yes, it's not the correct way to the.
So
Yeah.
I normally say something like it sounds more natural if you say do exercise.
Okay.
Yeah, people will understand if you
Yeah.
say make exercise,
Okay.
but it
Yeah.
sounds much more natural. That way
Yeah.
they
Make
can't
is
argue with
more.
you.
Okay. Yeah. Make is more create or and do is something that already is there. But
Yes.
when you make something, is you're creating something. So
Yeah.
you're just doing exercise.
Yeah. So,
So
so
what must
what you want to do with these kind of things is try to close it down as much as possible,
okay.
and try not to uh, take it to a place where there's going to be more questions. Yeah. So
Okay.
what you should do in that kind of situation is have something ready. You know, if you can
Yes.
If you can give an answer like that, it's better to say do. It sounds more natural. Make, probably wouldn't use that very much. And if they ask another question, you can say something like, well, I'll refer that to Stephen after the lesson. Yeah, it's a very good question.
Okay.
We haven't really got time for that now. I'll refer it to Stephen after the lesson, or I'll get back to you next lesson. Something to close down the conversation, because you don't want to get into a discussion about grammar. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
Great. Yes, you said I have something prepared, but I read everything and I did not expect that question.
Yeah.
Yeah, to me it's very natural by now, so
Yes. Yeah.
exactly.
So just one or two things to hit them with. So first of all, give it a go. If you're confident that you know the answer to their question.
Yes.
Yeah. If you're not confident, then I'll get back to you next time. If you want to put them off permanently, then you can always refer it to me. Just say,
Right.
I'll ask Stephen after the lesson. It's a good question. I don't want to answer now.
Okay.
I'll get back to you next lesson. Something like that. Yeah.
Perfect. What must you do if you want to remember something well? What must you do if you want to remember something well? You must repeat often.
You must repeat often if you want to remember something well.
Something well. Where can we buy a drink when we're thirsty? Where can we buy a drink when we're thirsty? We can buy a drink.
We can buy a drink
from a bar.
We're
thirsty.
When we're thirsty.
Which country must we go to if we want to hear people speaking in Greek? Which country must we go to if we want to hear people speaking in Greek? We must go to Greece.
To Greece.
If we want to hear
people
speaking Greek.
Speaking Greek.
What does one do when one is hungry? What does one do when one is hungry? One eats.
One eats.
When one
is hungry.
Sorry, do students get tangled in like words like when one?
Yeah, sometimes, but that particular one is not normally a problem.
Okay.
Normally, students sometimes struggle with the word one. I'm not sure why, because uno in Spanish is pretty much the same thing, but they seem to have a trouble with the concept. I think because we don't declare it as a pronoun with all the others, so they're just suddenly surprised that we're talking about a number.
Okay. Yes, but they get confused at what the word means, not necessarily about the sound.
Sometimes they get confused about the sound, but not for this particular one.
Great.
Yeah. So there are plenty of other things that they struggle on with sounds. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Do they sell drinks at most cinemas? Do they sell drinks at most cinemas? Yes.
Yes.
They sell drinks at most cinemas.
Drinks at most cinemas.
Perfect.
Okay, excellent, good. Yeah, so typical sorts of mistakes that they make is like the TH sound. So instead of the word three, they say tree. It's very common.
Yes.
Yeah, and like through and thought and things like that, they struggle a lot with those. And the past tense endings of ed. Yeah, so like, for example, walked.
Yes.
Yeah, so you get a combination of missing it altogether. So I walk to my house yesterday, so without the ed, right. Or they overpronounce the ed. So I walked to my house yesterday.
Right.
Okay. In stage 7, we spend a lot of time looking at the way to pronounce the past tense endings. Okay, so
Okay.
you've got a combination of things, so like asked, which sounds like a T, decided, which sounds like ID on the end. So we spend a lot of time
Yes.
looking at those. Okay, but even so, students struggle a little bit with those past tense endings. So you'll find yourself correcting those a lot, and you'll listen for those a lot as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
And do we correct like sounds? For example, sometimes in English we skip over the letter T. Uh, I, I can't I can't think of one specific.
Okay, so for example, wanted. Okay,
Yes.
so American English, wanted.
Yes.
Yeah. So my recommendation for that is to pronounce the letters. So pronounce the T's
Yes.
rather than speak in kind of regular speech. So for the
Okay. Yes.
we've got two other American English speaking teachers, if you like, that speak with American accent,
Yes.
and it's always an issue at the beginning.
Yes.
If you could put yourself in the
Because
place of the students, then err on the side of overpronouncing rather than underpronouncing.
yes.
Yeah. So things like going to, I'm going to the, I'm going to go on holiday. Not I'm going to go on holiday. I'm going to go on holiday. So pronounce,
Okay.
not the gonna.
Yes. No, because I realized in one of our first lessons, I said city instead of city, and you didn't even correct it. I just heard myself and I knew it was a bit wrong.
Yeah, it's not that it's wrong. That's your natural way of speaking when you're speaking to other people with other English speakers. But you've got to realize that this is a lesson for practicing and learning to speak, and it's much easier if you pronounce or enunciate as clearly as possible.
Yes.
Yeah, so you got to give them a chance. When they get to stage 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12, then they ought to be able to deal with that. Sorry, do you need to go?
Yes, give me a second.
Yeah.
Yes, sorry. Give me just 1 second. They were fixing something in the room next to me, and they had to check if everything's okay.
Okay, good. Okay, so we've got a couple of minutes left, so we'll quickly go through lesson 86.
Yes.
And what we'll
Wait,
do,
sorry.
yeah.
Because I Google translated the word ought, and it said debería, but isn't it closer to I should more than I must?
Yes, so I must is yo debo.
Debo. Okay, yes.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Because, well, there's a grammatical explanation for this. So what we're using is what's called modal verbs. So it just affects, it doesn't affect the meaning of the word, it just affects the way the verb is done. So
Okay.
I must eat. It still means I eat, but it's to do with probability and obligation. So
Yes.
I must eat, I'm obliged to eat. I should eat means I have an option. It's not an obligation. So all those words are modal verbs. So should and ought to are pretty much the same. The only difference is that we use the word to with ought.
Okay, yes.
Yeah. Okay, so where should we start then? Well, let's go down and we'll start with the word ought then, just for the fun of it. And you present to me.
Great. Ought, debería. Ought has the same meaning as should, but it must be followed by the infinitive with to. For example, instead of saying I should go now, we say I ought to go now. Normal everyday conversation, I should is more common than ought. What can we say instead of should? What can we say instead of should, Stephen? We can say ought instead of should.
Instead of should.
Give me an example of the word ought. Give me an example of the word ought. I ought to go have dinner.
Go and have dinner.
When we borrow money, ought we pay it back as soon as possible?
Okay, so one little thing there is because they put a lot of emphasis on using the word to after ought. In this question, ought we to pay it back as soon as possible? Okay, so for you and me, ought we to pay it back? You missed the word to there.
Okay.
Yeah, for us, it's natural to say, ought we pay it back as soon as possible? But it would be confusing to the students if we leave out the word to there. Okay. It works fine with the word to, but sometimes it sounds a little bit odd to us as first language speakers. But it is technically correct, and you will see it in that form. So in order not to confuse the students and not to have them ask you questions, remember to include the word to in there with that question. Okay, so when we borrow...
I believe, starting in stage 5, the answers start to get blanked out. Is it for the student?
It's a little bit for the student and a little bit for the teacher as well. Really, it's just laziness on behalf of the author of the book. They just don't want to type in all the words again. But you will find that with a little bit of practice, the 3 dots, you will automatically be able to fill it in.
Yes, I believe I can work around it. But,
but it's one of those additional things that you have to do, as well as listening to the students, correcting them, and all of that. It's just a little extra bit of straw on your back. Okay?
Yes, perfect. Great. So when we borrow money, ought we to pay it back as soon as possible? When we borrow money, ought we to pay it back as soon as possible? Yes.
Yes.
When we borrow money, we ought to pay it back
as soon
as
possible.
What ought we do before crossing the road?
Okay, again with the word to there. So what ought we to do?
Oh, sorry. What ought we to do before crossing the road? What ought we to do before crossing the road? We ought to look both ways.
To look both ways before crossing
the road.
The street.
Not. Oh yes. Do you think children ought to be allowed to go to bed whenever they want? Do you think children ought to be allowed to go to bed whenever they want? No.
No.
I don't think. Children ought to. Wait, sorry. Should I say ought to go to bed or ought to be allowed?
Ought to be allowed.
Ought to be allowed to. Go to bed. Whenever they want.
Okay, so this is a good example of where practice helps you know what things are coming up, and it also helps to review before the lesson. I know you looked at it before the lesson, but each time you come across these things in your mind, it tells you, right, okay, next time when I give a lesson, I'll look out for those things. Yeah.
Okay.
So it just highlights that it's a good idea to have a quick look through the material before you get there. It avoids accidents.
when I look through, I try to translate and remember
Yeah,
the headlines, as well as also read the both questions and answers, but I don't question them, and I don't
yeah.
think of them as in the moment of when I'm teaching it.
I've,
So
it's natural. You can't
yes,
read and remember everything. It's impossible. But the idea of having a quick scan through it is just to see whether something pops out to save you the difficulty in a lesson. So if you
yes,
spotted something before the lesson, then it gives you an advantage. Yeah. So
yes.
you're just trying to reduce the little issues that come up in the lesson. Okay, let's carry on. We'll finish at 12 if that's all right, and we'll just do this
Okay.
next section. Rough and smooth.
Do you want me to
Yes,
present?
please. You present to me. Yeah.
Great. Rough means áspero, and smooth means suave. Surface, superficie. Seasick is mareo en el mar, and roughly means aproximadamente. Yeah, cercanamente. Is the surface of this table rough? Is the surface of this table rough? No.
No.
The surface of the table
The surface of the table
is not rough.
is not rough.
It is smooth.
It is smooth.
When we speak about the sea, we usually describe it as calm instead of smooth. So when you travel by boat, do you prefer the sea to be rough? When you travel by boat, do you prefer the sea to be rough? No. When I
No.
travel by
When I
boat,
travel by boot,
not boat, boat.
boat.
I don't
I don't
prefer
prefer
the sea to be rough.
the sea to be rough.
I prefer it
I prefer it
to be calm.
to be calm.
Why? Why do you say that? Because a rough sea
Because a rough sea
makes me feel
makes me feel
seasick.
seasick.
If someone tells you that they are feeling rough, what does that mean? If someone tells you that they are feeling rough, what does that mean? If someone tells me
If someone tells me
that they are
that they are
feeling rough,
feeling rough,
they mean
they
they
mean
aren't
they aren't
feeling well.
feeling well. Okay, so this is a good example to use, this one. Okay, so with this question, that it's very difficult for the students to know the answer to this one.
Yes.
Okay, so when you read the question, sometimes what happens is as you're reading it, you realize that the students haven't got much of a chance with this.
Yes.
So what you can do is you can say, if someone tells you that they're feeling rough, what do you mean? Well, I'll tell you. If someone tells me that they're feeling rough, they mean they aren't feeling very well.
Great.
If someone tells you that they're feeling rough, what do they mean? Yeah. So what you can do is you can halfway through, you can turn around and say, well, I'll tell you, and then give them the answer. Okay, I've lost you again. Yep, no, you're back.
Same thing with
back.
No.
Yeah, it
Okay.
froze
I could have
for
done
a
the same
second.
thing with the why
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can say, why? Well, I'll tell you, because a rough sea makes me feel seasick. So why? Because a rough sea. So it allows you to kind of back out a little bit and give them the answer
Yes.
without saying, oh, well, you don't know that, do you? Oh,
And I feel it's easier on the students as well, because yeah, they know what they're about to say. It's not
yes.
like I'm just repeating every word the teacher is saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great.
So that's a good little phrase to have. Well, I'll tell you, and then give them the answer, and then go back and ask the question again. Okay.
Great. Yes. Roughly, how many people would you say there were in Spain? Roughly, how many people would you say there were in Spain? I'd say there were roughly
I'd say there were roughly
30 million people
30 million
in
people
Spain.
in Spain. Very good. Good on the geography.
Thank you. I actually don't.
It's a little bit higher than that, but it's good to have a number. Oh, I've lost you completely now.
I can hear you.
Yeah. Your picture is frozen and your voice is very cut, stuttering a lot. Well, I can't hear you at all now. Hello, hello.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah. No, I can't.
Hear me, Stephen.
Yeah, I can hear you. Yep. Now you're back.
Okay. Yes. Do you like rough weather? Do you like rough weather? Yes or no, Stephen?
Yes, I like.
Yes. I like rough weather.
Rough weather.
Which do you think is the roughest sport one can play? Which do you think is the roughest sport one can play?
I think Russian
maybe
roulette.
It's not a sport necessarily.
Okay.
I believe rugby.
I believe rugby
is the roughest sport.
Is the roughest sport
one can play.
One can play. One can play. Great. Okay, good. So that was good that we saw a few different little issues there. So that was worthwhile. I'm trying to get another group of students together so that we can do another practice session. I haven't managed to do it just yet, but I will definitely let you know because I think it will be useful to do another lesson with the students.
Yes. If it's useful to you, tomorrow in the afternoon, I don't work.
Okay.
Unlike last week.
Okay.
Because you offered me last week, I think at 8 p.m. on Thursday.
Yeah.
Well, I'm available within all the time.
Excellent. What we'll do tomorrow then at 8 p.m. if you can be available is you'll join the class. I'll do the majority of the class, but you can do a little bit of the class as well.
Okay.
So normally at this stage we'll still be practicing with the students, but I think you're ready to do a little bit of the class. So we'll do a little bit, and then we'll try to build up a little bit more from there. Okay.
Perfect.
So this is stage 8 tomorrow.
Stage 8. Great.
8. Let me go and have a look.
Great.
Yeah. Let me have a look at the sheet. So we'll be starting from page 670 tomorrow.
What lesson?
So this is lesson number 122.
22. Perfect.
Okay.
Great. I'm looking at the headlines and I know most of these words.
Okay, that's good.
So yeah, I pictured stage 8 to be very more in depth, more than just continue explaining more words and terms.
Yes, there's quite a bit of explanation in there.
Okay.
And we're looking at some of the grammar in there as well. So be used to and used to. I've seen that before. And one extra thing that they have at the end of the lessons in stage 7 onwards is an idiomatic expression at the end of each lesson. Okay, so furthermore, moreover. Yeah. Okay, so have a look through 3 lessons from there. So what do we say? Lesson 1, 2, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 4, and 1, 2, 5, because we're right at the end of 1, 2, 2. So 1, 2, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 4, 1, 2, 5. Okay, have a quick scan of those. And I'll send you Okay, no, it's Zoom sending me messages. Yeah, no, that should be fine. You'll use the same link as we used today, Zoom 1 and Zoom
Okay.
2. Okay.
Great.
If you have any questions after the lesson, send me a WhatsApp.
Great, I will do.
Okie dokie. Well, have a good day.
Thank you very much.
And I'll send you. I'll still try and go ahead with the practice session with the other students anyway, because I think the more practice we get, the better. But
that sounds great.
Do you want to get together tomorrow morning at 11 as well for more practice, or straight to 8 p.m.? Yeah.
Yes. Is it necessary? Because we're gonna meet.
Yeah, I think you're pretty much ready.
Okay.
It's just from your point of view, if you fancy doing a bit more practice, then I'm available to do more practice with you beforehand.
All right.
Yeah. But I think as far as the technical aspects are concerned, I think you know all the things that are necessary. And I think it's just a matter of getting in front of students now.
All right.
Okay.
Well, I think we can meet at 8 p.m. and I'll take my time to read thoroughly through the lessons.
Excellent.
122 through 25.
Okay. Brilliant. All right. So I'll see you directly at 8 o'clock tomorrow then.
I'll see you then.
Okay. So if anything comes up, WhatsApp me and I'll answer the question. All right. Take care, Francesco. See you tomorrow.
Thank you. And have a great day.
Thank you very much. See you tomorrow. Bye.
See you tomorrow. Bye.